Hey team, it's Mary Lou Kayser. Before we get into today's show, I've got a question for you. How much time and thought have you put into designing your legacy? I'm not talking about financial planning. We do a pretty good job of preparing people for that. I'm talking about what happens in that space once the career ends. The truth is, too many people who have worked hard their entire lives discover they are not prepared for what happens when the work stops. And guess what? Your legacy will be defined for you whether you decide to own it or not. You see, I believe we are not here to leave a legacy. I believe we are here to live a legacy. And it is up to us to design and define the legacy we want to live. That's why I want to invite you to be a part of Your Legacy, Your Life, an exciting 6-week virtual program you get to enjoy once a week from the comfort of your home, beginning on February 20th and going through March 26th. Each week, we will meet for 90 minutes to explore the exciting possibilities of designing a legacy you can be proud of. Think of this program as a way to get clear about what life after work can mean for you from a personal and purpose vantage point. Get a customized legacy profile specific to your most authentic and true self. Gain clarity about what your life's experiences and how they can add value and make a difference to others. See your legacy roadmap unfold each week to guide you into the next phase of life with confidence and a sense of possibility. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I hope you will join me. Right now, early bird pricing is available, but the price will increase soon. Check out all the details over at maryloukayser.com/legacy24. That's maryloukayser.com/legacy24. This is a great opportunity to work with me and a cohort of dynamic professionals like the ones you hear each week on this podcast. What's your living legacy worth to you? I'm offering you the chance to not only create your legacy, but own the narrative of what it means. Again, go to maryloukayser.com/legacy24. I hope to see you there. Now, on to today's show.
You know, the place where we most often meet clients is when they feel like the best word I can use for it is stuck. And what I mean by stuck is they have gotten to the $3 million phase, or they've gotten to 5 million, and their team is 25 people. And all of a sudden it's just like, man, we can't seem to get past this point. Right. And it's a really good indicator of hitting the complexity threshold where all they feel like they do is put out fires. And so that's typically an indicator of, okay, now it's time for us to actually systematize and slow down and simplify as opposed to get more complex. And so we often meet people in that, hey, we've gotten to a certain point and we can't figure out how to get to the next one, right? And that's that kind of stuck feeling. And or the other stuck feeling is they're dealing with so many fires that it feels like they're moving backwards, right? Some of the clients that we have, I just refer to them as on fire, right? And we go into firefighter mode a little bit before we get back into architect mode. But that firefighter mode is, all right, you've got some serious problems going on. Let's make sure you're good and safe as a business first. And now let's simplify structure.
This is the Play Your Position podcast, where we huddle up, call the plays, and inspire you to run your ball into the end zone. Are you ready to score more game-winning touchdowns in your life, business, and career? Then listen up, because it's game time, baby. Now, here's your host, Mary Lou Kayser.
All right, Team PYP, Mary Lou Kayser here. Welcome to today's episode of the Play Your Position podcast. I'm excited you have joined me today because I have a guest who is suited up and ready to take us down onto the field of his leadership journey and how that journey is impacting the world in positive ways. You are going to learn about how you or people that you love who are running businesses can implement systems to make things more efficient, to grow, and to just be a better business all around. His name is Dave Newell. He's coming to us today from Charlotte, North Carolina. Dave, are you ready for kickoff?
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
So I am excited to have you because you are talking about something that most of us either avoid completely or know so little about doing it well. And team, what I'm talking about is Dave is on a mission to align the misaligned, connecting leaders with systems that foster outstanding work and personal fulfillment. What he does all day, he collaborates with small business leaders to implement the Five Facets of Business, which is a small business operating system that he and his team have developed. And this system is designed to optimize processes, foster team alignment around culture, strategy, operations, story, and finances. The framework provides leaders with the necessary clarity and alignment to crush both short and long-term goals. Dave has coached hundreds of leaders, both nationally and internationally, and has implemented this framework for the last 11 years. So with that said, Dave, let's have you set the context for our conversation today. Tell us your story about when you first got the call to leadership. How old were you? What was going on in your life at the time? And then connect the dots for us. How has answering that call played a role in what you're doing today?
Great question. Thank you for kicking it off. In many ways, the call to leadership has probably always been there. I think where maybe I started to listen to that call and accept that call to leadership is maybe a way to think about it, was really, I think I was 32 years old is probably the answer I'll give there. I was working in higher education at the time. Actually, a lot of my background is in higher education and community organizing. And I had the opportunity to step into the consulting world and start doing some training and development work. And I was so fortunate to get that opportunity because what it did is it exposed me to companies that were experiencing some significant cultural challenges. They couldn't sell their product. They couldn't do these things. And you could see it in their body language. You could see it in how they showed up in the room, that this was something that they carried with them, not just in the work environment, but back at home. I can only imagine what their spouses and their kids were hearing. And I started to feel this kind of real pull towards, man, there's got to be a better way to do this than the training and development space. And that's not a dig on training and development. I think that's really important. But training and development to me only lasts so long. And so I really started asking the question of, okay, if we're going to train on trust, or we're going to train on sales processes, or we're going to train on these things, how do we actually sustain this training over time? How do we turn this from an idea or a theory or a concept into reality? And I think that was when I first started getting to the place where I started thinking more in systems and structure.
Okay. So bring us into that world. Why? Let's start with why is it that so many of these business owners that you encountered are struggling? What is it about the climate of the world today that is fostering, I don't know if you want to use the word chaos or unfulfilled expectations or the inability to get a product out the door? Just nobody wants it. I mean, what's going on out there that your Five Facets of Business solution helps to transform?
Yeah, it's a really great question. I think James Clear probably says it the best in his Atomic Habits book, where he says, we don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. And I think that's such a profound statement if you think about it, because how many of us have goals? Probably all of us. And when people step into leadership in a business or they step into leadership in an organization, the thing that they rely on the most typically is their skills, their ability, and their experience. And so they take those things as far as they can take them. Meaning, I work with a lot of organizations who are, let's say $1 million to $5 million companies or $10 million companies. And they hit what I refer to as the complexity threshold. And what that means is like their kind of big dog operator mentality of like flying around and solving problems. And this guy's such a good problem solver. This woman can, she's such a good salesperson. Well, that's all great until you get past your capacity to handle it. And that's the point where actually systematizing, simplifying, and scaling become really important. You actually have to step back and say, okay, well, me as an individual, I can only take it so far. How can we actually create the environment or create the conditions for other people to be successful doing this as well? And I often find that that's where the complexity kicks in of, I don't know how to do that part, right? Because I've been effective at flying around and solving problems on my own, but I don't know how to bring other people into it.
Mm-hmm.
And so we start very basically with, we call it the Five Facets assessment. It's like a 5-minute baseline, and it just starts to point at certain questions and certain ways of thinking. So there's kind of a mindset aspect to it. But then there's also just a very basic structural piece to it of, do you have these particular structures in place? Like, do you understand what your core business is? Do you even have a sales process? Do you forecast in your finances? Do you have a process? Do you have a profit plan? Like, we just start to poke at basic, what seem like basic things, right? But when you put them all together, now you have a system, right? So it's not one thing. We say we take a systems approach, not a symptoms approach. And when you start to deal with complexity, or you start to feel overwhelmed, you just start to attack symptoms most often.
Yeah.
That's where I think most business leaders get into trouble.
I like that differentiation between systems and symptoms. And yes, I'm raising my hand. I know I've gotten to the point where I felt overwhelmed with just a lot. The world is complex. There's no question. And with the rise of all the technology that now is an essential ingredient to modern business. I mean, even at the base level, you got to have a smartphone, right? You have to be able to communicate through text or email or both, or even make a simple phone call. Taking photos of experiences or events could be a part of your marketing or your sales process, for example. I mean, there is a lot to deal with. And so at what point do clients show up to you? What is a good fit for you working with a small business?
Yeah, great question again. You're asking such good questions.
Good.
Yeah, thank you for that. The place where we most often meet clients is when they feel like, the best word I can use for it is stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by stuck is they have gotten to the $3 million phase, or they've gotten to 5 million, and their team is 25 people. And all of a sudden it's just like, man, we can't seem to get past this point.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it's a really good indicator of hitting the complexity threshold, where all they feel like they do is put out fires. And so that's typically an indicator of, okay, now it's time for us to actually systematize and slow down and simplify, as opposed to get more complex. And so we often meet people in that, hey, we've gotten to a certain point and we can't figure out how to get to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's that kind of stuck feeling. And or the other stuck feeling is they're dealing with so many fires that it feels like they're moving backwards. Right. Some of the clients that we have, I just refer to them as on fire. Right.
Yeah,
and we go into firefighter mode a little bit before we come back into architect mode. But that firefighter mode is, all right, you've got some serious problems going on. Let's make sure you're good and safe as a business first. And now let's simplify structure.
Okay. Could you give a couple of examples of those metaphorical fires that businesses are facing today?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So one of the greatest examples of this, I think, of how you can kind of blend systems to address fires. We were working with a manufacturing company here in North Carolina, and when I first got connected to the organization, they had 34 employees, and 13 of them were on the docket to be fired because there was a lot of just people issues, essentially, right? And so they brought me in to do some coaching and to do some work with these people, and I started asking the question, like, it can't be this many people who are disgruntled and terrible employees. Like, that's a condition problem, right? So we're creating the conditions for them to behave this way,
right?
And what we realized is that there were 7 stages in their manufacturing process, And none of the other 6 stages knew what the one was doing. And so
Oh,
there was a
wow.
ton of communication breakdown. There were, if one department changed a process, it affected all other 6 departments, but they weren't communicating that very effectively, right? So to put that fire out, we created what we called a coalition. And the coalition was a member or 2 from each of the departments. And we got together and we just started documenting processes together. Right. We started saying, okay, in engineering, this is what's happening. And once it goes from engineering, it goes to the floor. And once it hits the floor, we're in fabrication. So now we're in fabrication. What do you all do? And within a month, we cut 2 weeks off the production time.
Wow.
And only one person was left on the docket for being fired, essentially, for behavioral issues. And that was just because that person wasn't a fit, right?
Right.
But so it was a systems approach to what you were seeing, which is we have all these employees that are disgruntled, frustrated, burning out, angry. And instead of saying, well, let's fire all these employees, or let's, take an approach where we're treating it like a cultural issue, is actually a process documentation problem.
Isn't that interesting?
So
it wasn't people, it was process.
Yeah. And so there is this like real important step in the process, which is the assessment phase. Right. And one story I like to share with folks is, we often say, well, where are you going? Right. Which is, tell us at the end of the map, like, what's your destination? And really the first question should be like, where are we on the map? Right. If you go hiking, or you go, walk into a mall or whatever it is, what's the first thing they show you on the map? Like,
you are here.
Right.
Yes.
And so that's how we figured out it was a documentation problem and not a people problem, is we actually took the time to say, well, what's really going on here? Right. And getting clear about the core problem. And that's the piece about systems, not symptoms, right? The people problems, that's a symptom of something else, right?
Yes.
So what most people will give you is what we refer to as the lagging indicators, right? So they'll tell you like, well, we're not getting product out the door on time, or our customer service is terrible, or we're not closing deals. It's like, well, those are all symptoms. What's happening upstream? What are the controllable things upstream that we can change that will affect how your output is showing up?
Interesting. And you look at that example, 12 people didn't get fired.
Yeah. Yeah. And they got to go home and
probably
have a better experience.
Yeah, they had a great experience, and that you shaved 2 weeks off of production time, which is also awesome. And perhaps increased profits. I mean, it was a win-win-win.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, I mean, part of what catalyzed this conversation is the leadership question. And if you think about the impact of, how you talked about the conditions of society as well. It's like, well, most of us work and most of us feel the pressure. And part of technology is we never feel separate from it. Right. It's like, I can see my
always
email.
There.
I can see my email all day, any day, whenever I want. And there's always a new one. Right. And so if you think about that, if your work is miserable or stressful or frustrating, it's like you never get away from it. Where I think, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, like we didn't have cell phones. Like there was always a degree of separation. And now there isn't. Like I couldn't just leave it at work. It's like, well, work came with me. It's in my pocket, actually. So if you think about the impact from a leadership perspective, if we can create a healthier environment, align the misaligned, as we said, if we can create alignment for people and we can create alignment for processes, everybody has a better chance to flourish at home and at work.
Definitely. All right. So that comment about where you growing up in the 80s and 90s, and remember a time when there was, first of all, there were no cell phones. There were no, the internet was in the 90s was just a baby, and we didn't. Very few people truly understood what it was going to mean on a global scale. The ones that did are extremely rich right now, because they saw they could see. I'm talking about the Larry Pages of the world and things like that. People like that. But I'm curious. What generation are the majority of the owners of the businesses that you tend to work with, Dave? Are they older? I mean, are they Gen X? Are they boomers? Or are you now dealing with also millennials, maybe even I mean, I can't imagine a Gen Zer owning a manufacturing company, but perhaps it's a family business, I'm just curious because there are certainly generational mindsets based on what we remember growing up with and how we came of age and how business once was done. And again, the advent of all these technologies that are now constantly in our pocket, I think is an important point and plays a role in the work that you do. And certainly in listeners, we're all grappling with, what does this mean? I want to have a life. I want to feel fulfilled. I want my business to thrive. I want, or if I'm in love with somebody who's running a business, or I have a family member who's running a business, I want them to succeed. And there just seems to be a lot of talk about toxic cultures today and people being disgruntled, and the right hand isn't talking to the left. So again, do you see a generational connection here? And how do you address that?
Yeah, it's another good question. The most of the folks that I work with, I would say, are probably between 28 and 50.
Okay.
So you do get kind of a cross between, what I would say are the millennials or the Gen Xers, right?
Definitely.
I was born in 1980. I'm right on the line. Like,
I
actually mildly identify with both.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a difference in how they interact, or the role of technology in the different organizations, right? Like, some of the younger organizations that I work with tend to be more e-commerce focused. Like, I've worked with some of our client base are kind of like Amazon marketing agencies where they help you sell products on Amazon. Those tend to be some of the younger folks that I work with. You've got manufacturing clients, which tend to be some of the older folks that I work with, or more kind of traditional ideas of what business once were. But the truth is, like, they're all impacted by all of it because they have to be. And, one thing I think it comes down to is often the paradox of choice, right? Which is, there's so much access and there's so much information. There's so many software programs. There's so many different things you can use that I find that what becomes challenging is we try to use too many things, or we overcomplicate because it's easy to overcomplicate. So, I think about probably 7 apps that I have on my phone that I don't think I've looked at in the last year.
Yep.
Because I thought, at the time, this would be amazing. This will totally help me change my life and be great, whatever, and then it didn't and won't, because I don't have the capacity or the time or whatever to implement it and integrate it in a way that's meaningful.
Right.
That's not a dig on the software or the app. I'm sure it's serving certain people really well, but for me, it just didn't work. But I want to come back to one piece that you said around meaning. And I think there's something to me that's universally true for people that run organizations, or even are just employees in organizations, or participate in some way, shape, or form, is that there has to be a purpose to the organization. One of the elements that we add is purpose. And that's not unique. That's not even interesting. Most organizations have a purpose, right? Why do you exist? Why do we do what we do? They have some sense of what that answer is. I think the difference is, you can't just get away with having a mission statement, or you can't just get away with having a purpose statement anymore. You have to figure out, and how do we make that part of how we operate? And what I mean by that is, where does that story show up regularly throughout the organization? Where are we telling a story? How is that part of our performance reviews? How is that part of our weekly meetings? How is that part of our goal setting, right? How is that part of our strategic infrastructure in our organization? And I think that's the difference. I think folks are craving, why am I doing this task, or why am I doing this thing that my boss wants me to do? And if you can't draw the connection between the high level goal that you're trying to achieve, which is the purpose, and the daily work that you're doing, you're going to experience stress and frustration.
Mm-hmm.
And so
that's a powerful observation.
Yeah, whether you're 25 or 52, I think it's still true. I think humans want to be part of something that's bigger and more meaningful than just themselves. And so if we're not capturing that narrative, and we're not, I call it as a leader, kind of championing that narrative, then we're failing our employees, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm. So I presume that developing that narrative is part of the work you do with the 5 facets of business? Because you include the word story in there. That's one of the facets.
Yep. And story is actually, this one is a little bit more targeted towards sales and marketing, where this one shows up is in culture. But each of the 5 facets, so culture, story, or culture, strategy, operations, story, and finance, each one has what we call kind of like framing elements and then implementation elements.
Mm-hmm.
And so, on the culture side, you have purpose, vision, values, which is kind of the why do we exist, where are we going, and who are we going to be, right? And those are framing elements. But underneath that, then you have ritual and you have performance reviews. Are we incorporating our values into performance reviews? Where is meeting structure? Like, how does that get woven into how we do business on a regular basis? So the ritual aspect of it is, well, I think I just had a meeting with a client this morning where we talked exactly about this, which is, okay, so you have, a certain core value around having fun, for example. Okay, well, how does that show up from a ritual perspective? Where is that in onboarding? Where is that in how you celebrate employee birthdays? Where is that in, how you might offboard somebody or somebody who's worked there for 5 years? Are you celebrating that? And are you doing it in a way that's fun?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's not just saying like, hey, have fun. That's one of our core values. And then hope it works, right? Like just write it on the wall and hope everybody embraces it. It's like, no, we actually have to create the conditions. That goes back to that systems piece. We have to create the conditions for fun to be part of how we operate.
Wow. That's different. People aren't, not that I'm an expert in, going around to all these businesses, but I've been talking to a lot of people for a lot of the years on this show. And then prior to that, I also was in education and know that these kinds of things just aren't presented to us. They're not intuitive.
Yeah.
It seems like it's only when we hit crisis mode, when we say, gosh, we got to figure something out here, that some real change begins to happen. And I know one of the things you're wanting to do with a conversation like this is make people aware of, maybe you address this before you hit crisis mode, right? Before it becomes toxic or it becomes so overwhelming that you just want to throw in the towel. Yeah. So what is your vision for your business? Tell us more about your company, and obviously you have this process that is working, but where do you see yourself going, Dave?
Yeah. Again, you ask such great questions. I feel like I'm learning through your questions.
Oh, good.
Which is great.
I'm a former teacher, so I guess.
Yeah. No, you definitely have a skill for this. I appreciate that. So I'll just back up and say our purpose statement is aligning the misaligned. Like that really.
Yes, I love that. Yeah.
Right. And so why do we lead with that? Because that's super important to us and where we're going. And so, this is something that we've done. And I say we, like our small consulting company, this is something that we've done for the last 11 years. And we've been able to impact a fair amount of people. And we've always kind of treated it as, referral based in terms of who we're talking to and how we're getting to work with clients. And we've always kind of kept it intimate. And I think just in the last year or two, we've started to broaden our own vision a little bit to think, hey, we're onto something here. There's something powerful. The clients that we work with, universally have a powerful experience. So what would it look like if we took this out into the world a little bit more? And that's really where we are. Our vision is to say, hey, if somebody is experiencing the challenge that they're experiencing and they want to have a better business, they should have access to this information. So our vision is really changing towards, providing access to systems thinking and the tools and the processes where people can solve their complex problems in their business, regardless of where they are, if they have an intimate relationship with us or not. Mm-hmm. Right. But they should have access to that. And that's really where our thinking has changed in the last year or so, and why we're starting to bring this out into the world a little bit more.
It's halftime here at the Play Your Position podcast, and we've got ourselves a great game. While you're up grabbing another snack and topping off your favorite beverage, make sure to subscribe to the show so you never miss another play. PYP is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever great podcasts can be found. Now, let's get back to the game.
It's wonderful. I mean, frameworks are so powerful because they are pinpointed. They're clear. You have obviously implemented this into your practice for 11 years and seen how it gets results. And that's ultimately what people want, is they do want to see something different than what they're experiencing, particularly when things are negative.
Yeah.
When things and it is interesting that you used the firefighter analogy earlier, and that sometimes that's the mode you realize when you get in there. Oh, we got to put out some fires before we can even begin to talk about building a structure. It's almost like in some of these neighborhoods across the country that have old homes or just places where it's not worth saving the original structure, that you got to just raise it, put it and start over. I mean, how do people respond when I'm sure you've had to have that conversation where you're like, you know what, we got to take this down to the foundation and start over. Are most people pretty receptive to that? Do you ever get pushback?
Yeah, absolutely. And I should say, most of the organizations that we work with, like if they take the 5 facets assessment, what we see is they generally are good at 2 or 3 of the categories. The other 2 kind of drag everything down, right? That's why it's a systems approach. Like they might be really good at culture and story and finance, but strategically and operationally, those two categories are lagging. And so they're seeing it drag the business down. So, it's not always necessarily the case where it's a fire, but it's often, man, if we could just elevate these aspects of our business, we could really hit the next level. Right. So that's definitely part of the story. But I think, your main question is a core one, which is, it gets really personal too, right? Like if you've cared about a product or you've cared about a process, like you designed a process 5 years ago and you've been doing it for 5 years and everybody's kind of fired up about it for a while. And now it's like, well, technology changed or the environment changed or the market changed and we can't, like that process isn't serving us anymore. It's really difficult to let go of something that, a lot of people use the term, well, it's my baby.
Yep. It's
like, well, yeah, but it's now a teenager and the teenager wants to leave the house, like now we kind of got to let the thing go.
Yeah.
And that's really difficult. Like I have a lot of empathy for that. That's really difficult. And, to pull in, kind of the MBAs will be happy to hear the term sunk cost, right? But it really is a sunk cost. It's, well, what did that teach you about where you need to go? We don't need to cut it in the way that we never have to talk about it or think about it again. But if it's not serving us and it's not going to serve us in the future, what do we care about more? Like the most compassionate thing we can do for that effort or for even that team member is to let them go, right? Because what we need to do to sustain the business in the long run is to make a shift. And so one thing we often say is don't let the short term get in the way of the long term.
Yeah.
Meaning, let's take some short-term pain because we're not here for the short term. We're here for the long term. You want your business to outlive you, whether you sell it or somebody takes it over or whatever, your child takes it on, whatever it might be. But if you're not willing to take on the short-term pain to potentially have some long-term gains, then, we need to have a different conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. Now the whole baby thing is very real. It's very, very real.
Yeah. Like if somebody asked you, all right, hey, podcasting is kind of fading, there's no longer an opportunity, to let your podcast go. Like that would hurt. You're really good at it. You've got a good followership, this is a thing you've built for a long time. But if you needed to pivot, that's a challenging conversation for most folks.
It is. It is very challenging. I was talking to a man this morning we were discussing change. And one of the things that he does when he's leading a workshop or a seminar is he'll ask people the question, how many of you are looking are looking for some change in your business and your life, and everybody in the room raises their hand. And then he follows it up with, and how many of you are willing to change in order to get that? And almost every hand goes down. Yeah. And change. You talked about the paradox of choice. It's the paradox of change as well. We crave it. We want it. We see something that we don't have and say, well, I want that. And then the question inevitably after that is, okay, so what are you willing to change to get that? Well, what do you mean I have to change? Well, I don't want to change. I like what I have, right? Things are comfortable for me, but I want that over there. Well, listen, if you want to, if you're driving a 1999 Volvo, okay, and you've been driving it for 5 years because that's what you could afford when you bought it, and now you got your eyes set on a brand new Chevy Denali all tricked out at $100,000, but you're on the Volvo 99 Volvo budget, you're going to have to change some things. Well, I don't want to do that. Well, then you don't get the Denali. Like, I know that's a simple and perhaps not the most effective analogy, but it is letting go of what's familiar, of what's comfortable, of what's known, to step into. And you can't guarantee that a business who employs the 5 facets of business is going to suddenly, skyrocket into the stratosphere. That you can't promise that, because that's out of your control. All you can do is provide a framework that you have a track record that says it works. Here's client A, client B, client M, client P that have all gotten results. But at the end of the day, if you don't do the work to support it, you're not going to see the change that you say you want.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. And one piece on change that I think has really transformed the way I view it is people don't fear change, they fear loss. And if you really think about that, right? If I said, all right, Mary Lou, you're going to I'm going to take you from a cubicle, I'm going to put you in the corner office, and I'm going to give you more responsibility, I'm going to give you a pay raise, like all of that is change. And you'd be like, sweet, that's amazing, thank you. But if I said, hey, I'm going to take you from the corner office, I'm going to demote you, and I'm going to ask you to do less work, and I'm going to pay you less, you're going to be super upset, right?
Yep.
And anytime human beings feel like we're going backwards or we're stuck is where we actually have the opportunity to catalyze change, right?
Yes.
Because what we're doing is we're inviting you into something better. And it's only when we feel like we're going to lose something, like we're going to go backwards or it's not going to work out, is where we resist change. And so sometimes the things that we feel like we're losing in change might just be certainty. Mm-hmm. Like, I know what I do every day and I'm very comfortable doing what I do every day. Well, I'm going to change that. It's like, well, so as the person who's catalyzing the change, I have to be thoughtful about, well, what are people going to be losing when we do this change, or if we encourage this change, and how are we compassionate about addressing the loss that's going to take place? And sometimes it's really difficult because you are losing things like certainty, and there's not much you can do about that.
No.
Other than, well, how do I overshare, or how do I give as many details as we can give to add as much certainty as I possibly can, knowing that I may not be able to replace it totally. But I think your point is really well taken, that, it really is a consideration of change for what? Like, what's the change for? And can I really meet people in that space and give them enough information and be compassionate enough about what they might be losing to inspire them to take action?
Yeah. Boy, that is a fine rail that
sure.
people ride. I mean, even yourself as somebody who's been doing this for 11 years, I'm sure you've had to let go of some things along the way that might not have been so easy. I'm curious if there's one particular thing that you remember, vividly going, wow, I've got to let this go if I'm going to move into this next phase.
Honestly, you already raised that question with me, like with what's your vision for the future, is it took me probably a year and a half to come to terms with the fact that this needed to be bigger than me.
Oh, wow. A year and a half. Yeah.
I resisted it for a long time because my initial idea of, I left higher education. I left kind of the safety of full-time employment because I could see this opportunity to do something really interesting. And I was getting some traction in it and I felt good about it. And it was really powerful and important work. But I always kind of had the story of like, I'll just be the one guy who does consulting and I'll serve people who I care about, personally and have relationships with. And at some point it kind of grew beyond me. And I actually resisted that for some time.
Mm-hmm.
And I got stressed out and I got frustrated and I was overworking because, I really couldn't come to terms with the fact that I needed to think about this business differently than I was. And it actually was people outside of the business. Like I'm a huge proponent for coaches, for consultants, for just engaging people who are not in your business to help you think about your business. There's nothing, I have 6 people that I talk to on a regular basis around, hey, help me think about this differently. And it's about that time where I started to engage people outside of Evolve to help me think about what Evolve could be. And they were the ones that opened me up. And they were the ones that said, hey, this is actually what I think I hear you saying. And it kind of coaxed me along of like, oh, you know what? I can still keep the intimate relationships. I can still keep this manageably small, but I don't have to deal with the stressors of taking on everything by myself or resisting the growth or feeling like I'm letting people down or any of the things that I was fearing. Right. And it took me too long, quite frankly. Like I'll admit I'm a little bit of a hypocrite at times and that I don't always take my own, advice or the lessons that I've learned from other people fast enough. But that was a big one for me. So this is really like us stepping out and doing podcasts and bringing the 5 Facets to the world is really the result of doing the work of changing.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being so candid about that, because I think that is a universal dilemma. I don't think you're alone in terms of taking longer. When in hindsight, you say, wow, why did it take me 18 months, right? A year and a half of my life, I was hemming and hawing and resisting and saying, no. But I think that's first of all, it's honest and it's also realistic for some people. This idea that I know in the tech space, it's I've had interviewed people on this show who say you want to hire slow and fire fast, and we often do the opposite. We hire way too quickly and are way too slow to let somebody go, and it ties in with what you were saying before about loss. That we have feelings of I don't want to we feel badly about having to part ways, and it could be in an employment situation, but it's in other ways in our lives as well. I mean, change is not just about business. This framework, believe it or not, I'm thinking of personal life applications. Within a family, how do we operate around here? What is our strategy for addressing the craziness of having, maybe you have 3 kids and one's in soccer and one's in theater and one's singing, right? And then they have homework and they're in 2 different schools and mom and dad are both working. I mean, this spills into everything.
Yeah.
And, to your point earlier, where we're constantly connected, that line between work and private life is pretty much gone now. You have to work really hard to set up those boundaries that say, no, I've unplugged, no email, no text, no phone calls for the next 3 days. I'm focusing on, it could be a camping trip, or it could be, we're just going to play games and make brownies and watch movies for 3 days. Right. And believe me, easier
awesome.
said, easier said than done.
Yeah.
Because the siren song of what's on our phone we've been conditioned now to be called to that. And also to your point earlier, the cornucopia of options for, we can make your business better. We can make your business faster. You need this, you need that. Nobody trained business owners how to make decisions around what tech do I need and what can I live without?
Yeah.
And so what we have, your dilemma, and I would imagine just about everybody listening, too many apps on the phone. I just deleted, 15 apps. I thought last week.
Yeah.
Because I said, why do I have these on here? They're taking up space. I don't use them, and there's no reason. But you know what? I'll be honest. I had a hard time hitting delete.
Yeah. Because
I
one
had a
day,
hard
maybe
time.
sometime you might use it once, Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's always there if I want to download it again. But I know myself, I'm not even going to remember now that it's gone, it's out of my head.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, absolutely.
oh my gosh. Okay. Well, as far you brought up coaching, you brought up having 6 people in your life. May I ask, are you part of a mastermind, or are these 6 individuals who are just different parts of your life that you consult with? How do you stay sharp besides just consulting with them? What is some of your approaches?
Yeah, that's a really great. I feel like I'm repetitive in saying that's a really great question. I'm saying that every time you ask me a question, but yeah, sometimes it's folks that have seen me in different stages of the business or are in a similar line of work, right? And they have done something that I find interesting, or that they beat me to the chase, and I'm like, hey, how'd you do that? Help me understand that. Or they might just be somebody who cares about me as an individual, as a person, as a dad, as a husband, right? And they might say, hey, cool it a little bit. Like, hey, how might you pull back into the family, or how might you think about this a little bit differently, or bring that context in. And I think it's just, people, I have been part of a mastermind, and I find a lot of value in those groups. I'm just not part of one now, but I have been, and I would be again. I find a lot of value in those. Absolutely. But I think what I've done is I've created my own mastermind a little bit. Like I said, I have about 6 people that I have at least monthly, if not, maybe quarterly conversations with, where it's like, hey, let's grab a lunch, let's grab a breakfast. And they kind of represent different perspectives or different ways of operating that really help me make sense of what's going on. But I think a real good condition of those folks is they're not telling me what to do.
Nice.
They're asking me what I would refer to as like generative questions, which is, hey, I see why you're thinking about it that way, but help me understand why you would take a left as opposed to go right here. It's like they just care about they care about me as a person enough to know that, to know what I want in the long run, or to know kind of who I am. And they can ask me questions that are going to bring me closer to that. And sometimes just flat out challenge me, right? To say like, I think that's a really bad idea. Like, great, thank you for your candidness, thank you for your honest answer. So I think just having people in your, who are in your corner, but who, I have a client who says you can't read the label when you're in the bottle. And, when you're a business owner, you're in the bottle all the time. You
are all the time.
So like somebody who can just on the outside say, hey, here's what I'm seeing. And you're like, oh gosh, that's great. Thank you so much for that insight. Because without that insight, I don't know if I could have made this different decision, or I don't know if I could have gone a different direction here. Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's just really helpful to have an outside set of eyes looking at what you're doing on a regular basis. And that could be business or life.
100%. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for describing what works for you, because again, the term mastermind gets tossed around, and sometimes people think, oh, do I need to be part of that? And not necessarily. And it's like you've assembled your own board of directors in a way that are guiding you, and I like the condition of honesty, and not somebody who's just going to sit there and say, oh, that's such a great idea at everything you say. I mean, it's important to have people that challenge us and say, what are you doing? Well, why are you even considering this? Does this have anything to do with, and it's like, no. And especially if you're creative minded, sometimes we need people to rein us back in and say, no, you told me that this is what you want. Is that still true? So wonderful.
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay. So how about you share with us where you hang out online? Where can people learn more about your business, Dave? And then you can share a couple of books that have been instrumental on your personal growth or your business growth, your leadership journey.
Yeah, absolutely. The best place to find me if you want to connect with me individually, I'm on LinkedIn. You can look up the 5 Facets of Business. We have a page there as well. We will share with you, Mary Lou, a page specifically for your listeners that they can access. But if you go to 5facets.biz, that is a great way to learn about the 5 facets. Probably one of the best ways to experience the framework without any obligation whatsoever to anything with us is to take the assessment. It takes 5 minutes. It's 26 questions, but it'll give you a immediate readout of kind of where you stand in the different aspects of your business. So we just strongly encourage people to, hey, just do this once a month. Take a check, right? Like just see where you're at. And if you have anything that feels really challenging, or you have anything, where you're scoring really low or you're really concerned about it, we absolutely do. We'll have conversations with anybody about their results, right? And to help them say, hey, here's where you can access some tools to actually, kind of take a step. Or if you want to explore that in more detail, we're happy to do that. But that's a really easy way to do that. If you go to 5facets.biz, you can access that assessment. And like I said, we'll share that with you for the show notes. And the last thing I'll say too is we do offer workshops throughout the course of the year. Right now, those are live workshops. We have a page on our website that kind of shows which workshops are coming up, and that's just a cheap, easy, kind of fun way to get connected to different aspects of systematizing your business in different ways. And so those are really fun. I just encourage people to check those out as well.
Definitely. So, team, that the links that Dave shares will be on his show notes page at pyppodcast.com. And I know I sound like a broken record when I say, take advantage of these amazing tools and resources that my guests share with us. They are here to help and give you some more insight, clarity, maybe thinking about your business from a different angle, all valuable. So that's great. And what are a couple of books that you've turned to over the years, or maybe you're reading now and you said, wow, this thing just changed everything?
Yeah. If we were on video, you'd see that I've got probably 1,000 books around.
Yeah.
It's a little challenging to pick them, but one that I think is probably a little bit more obscure, but really powerful is called Liminal Thinking by an author named Dave Gray. And liminal is essentially like the space between. It really speaks to what you and I were talking about around change, right? Like, how do we kind of enter safely into that space between and move through it? That's a really powerful book. I would say Made to Stick was a really good book. Chip and Dan Heath.
Oh, yeah.
Essentialism, Greg McKeown, Traction, Gino Wickman. Like the other author I would maybe mention in here is Mike Michalowicz. From a financial perspective, he wrote a book called Profit Plan.
Yep.
And if you're a small business owner and you haven't read that, it will transform the way you think about how you spend money in your business. And it's just a really practical, really clear story that honestly had a lot of impact, even in how I advise businesses. Like I learned a lot in that book, and I apply that to client conversations all the time.
Yeah, I recommend that book too. It helped me think about my own finances in a much different way. So awesome recommendations. Profit Plan, Essentialism, Liminal Thinking, and Made to Stick. Team, there'll be links to these books on Dave's show notes page as well, because leaders are readers, and you can always pick up something valuable from a book that has stood the test of time. And, people write books because they want to add value to the world and put out into people's radar that think about it this way. Have you thought about it that way? Definitely value there. So before we say goodbye, I'd like to give you a final opportunity to leave us here at PYP with some other idea that didn't come up today, or if you want to do a summation of some of your big points, Dave, I would love for you to wrap up what has been a fabulous conversation. Have the final word.
Well, thank you for that. The one piece I think I want to raise is, we kind of stated our purpose as aligning the misaligned, and I just want to give a real quick second of where that came from. We recognize that, companies are in different stages at different times, and there's really 3 phases of any company. There's misalignment, alignment, and realignment. And that is alignment is when your systems and your people are moving in the same direction. Misalignment is when they're moving in all sorts of different directions. It feels chaotic. And realignment is the act of moving back to alignment. And so what we try to do as an organization is take misaligned companies and put them back into realignment, try to give them the tools or the conditions to realign, to stay in alignment longer and to move through realignment faster moving forward. But I think it's a really helpful framework in even just thinking broadly speaking about where your business might be right now is what stage are we in? Are we aligned? Are we misaligned? Or are we working towards alignment through realignment? So last thing I'll say, thank you for giving me that last word. I appreciate it.
Hey team, Mary Lou here. Who's number one in football changes from year to year. Fashion trends come and go, same with musical tastes. But leadership skills, they never go out of style. In fact, these days, leadership is an essential survival skill for a world that demands more from us than ever before. To succeed these days, you need to know how to show up for yourself so that you can then do the work you love with people you like the way you want. The Play Your Position Leadership Playbook helps you do this, and it's free. Go to pyppodcast.com to download your copy today. If being more successful this year, next year, in the 21st century is on your to-do list, get your copy of the Play Your Position Leadership Playbook now. pyppodcast.com. It's at the top of the page. You can't miss it. That's pyppodcast.com, and start being more of the leader you are meant to be today. This podcast was produced by Daniel Romeros. Show notes for this episode can be found over at pyppodcast.com. I'm Mary Lou Kaiser. Thanks for listening.
Here at the Play Your Position podcast, we believe that the road to self-mastery and a life well lived starts with answering the call to leadership. That's when the fun really begins. Send this episode to any friends who might need to hear the inspiration and ideas you heard today. And feel free to rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform.